Well, former Vice President Mike Pence leveling some of his harshest criticism yet at former President Trump over the January 6th attack at the Capitol. Pence, during the annual Gridiron Dinner gathering of politicians and journalists in Washington over the weekend, saying this, quote, "President Trump was wrong. I had no right to overturn the election, and his reckless words endangered my family and everyone at the Capitol that day." Let's bring in Chris Hahn. He is NewsNation contributor and host of the Aggressive Progressive podcast. Chris, thanks for being with us, as always.
Great being here.
My first question, why now for Pence to say this? I mean, what do you make of the timing of Pence's remarks over the weekend?
Well, I think Pence is trying to distinguish himself from the rest of the GOP field, who will tiptoe around the former president, but will never mention his name. And I think Mike Pence has a bigger stake in it. I mean, Mike Pence, they sent these people to the Capitol, if you believe this, to kill Mike Pence and to stop him from doing his constitutional duty in certifying the election results. So I think Pence himself, who was in personal jeopardy that day, wants to make a statement. Not only that, I think what's going on other networks where they are changing the way people may see what happened that day has spurred Mike Pence and others to be more direct in what they say about what happened on January 6th. I think that's a good thing. I am not among those people who think it's too little too late. I believe what Martin Luther King said applies here. The time is always right to do what is right. And I think what is right now for Mike Pence is to firmly and strongly talk about what Donald Trump's role was on January 6th. And quite frankly, I think he should be even more honest with people prosecuting what happened on January 6th.
And let's delve a little bit further, Chris, into what was said. You know, I wasn't in the room over the weekend, but several of our D.C. NewsNation correspondents were. And what seemed to be the most stinging comment Pence made was this. He said, quote, "I know history will hold Donald Trump accountable." What do these remarks mean for the Republican Party and the support still being thrown behind former President Trump?
I mean, it's a harsh criticism, but I don't think it should just be history that holds people who were responsible for January 6th accountable. I think the American people and the justice system in this country should hold them accountable as well. But I think it's a very harsh comment. And I think, again, it's just dipping your toe in the water of separating yourself on the issue of the big lie. Other candidates have tiptoed around it. They have not stepped in the way Pence did. Pence is trying to get into this presidential race. I do not believe he has a lane in the GOP primary, but I do think it's a bold move on his part.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that very question. With all you've seen, with all you have heard from him, I mean, is he trying to position himself as the alternative to Trump? And if so, how does that play with swing voters in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I do think he is positioning himself to be an alternative to Trump. I don't think Pence is going to get to a place where he can be a choice for a swing voter. He would have to get through a Republican primary. And I just don't see the lane for him, given so many people within the Republican primary, particularly primary voters, activists within the party, still firmly believe a large part of the big lie. And that does not bode well for Mike Pence down the road. That said, you know, he has to make a case that what he did was the right thing, that he chose wisely on January 6th, that he upheld the Constitution because he believes in the United States of America and what it stands for. So I think it's a way for him to try, and we'll see if it moves the needle. I just don't believe that it will within a Republican primary. Now, should he get out of a Republican primary, you know, he has the way of claiming that he's not part of the big lie, that he stood up to the big lie, that he defended the Constitution, which could be a very compelling argument for swing voters, but he's got to get past the primary first.
Yeah. Well, hey, Chris Hahn, we could talk about this all day long. Thank you for your time and your expertise as always.
Anytime.
We'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.